Hello, I'm Doc Hamels, and I'm the host of Chautauqua Sunrise. But right now, I will be the host for you for today's show called Chautauqua Candidates. This is a series of 6 interviews which will be aired during the week of October 3 through the 9th. Our producer, Chris Burt, invited all candidates for the following offices: for District Attorney, County Executive, New York State Assembly, 150th District, New York State Senate, 57th District, and U.S. Congress, 23rd District. I want you to know that not all candidates accepted the invitation. This interview today is the 6th in the series, featuring Mr. Patrick Swanson, who is running for the office of District Attorney for Chautauqua County. And now it's my pleasure to welcome back Pat Swanson.
Thank you, Doc. Appreciate it.
You look like you've been a busy guy.
Yes. Yeah, we are in different times in the criminal justice world right now.
Absolutely. Okay. Pat, I've interviewed you before as district attorney. I had you before me for a debate, so I kind of know you a little bit. But folks that are watching right now may not know a whole lot about you. So share whatever you'd like to share, and then I'll try to fill in some of the blanks if there's anything missing.
Sure.
Who's Pat?
Well, I've been a prosecutor here in Chautauqua County for the last 8 years. I was a prosecutor for a little over a year up in Erie County prior to that, and before moving back to Chautauqua County, my wife and I were in Memphis, where I was a defense lawyer there, where I attended law school. My wife and I both grew up here. I graduated from Sherman High School. My wife graduated from Panama. Our family's still in the area. My brothers own a golf course, which is a lot of fun. My dad works over there now as he's retired. And I've been the DA for the last 4 years, and prior to that, I was the acting district attorney for 1 year. So it's good to be back here. It's good to be in public service. I'll tell you that, Doc. It's going from criminal defense work to being a prosecutor, really life-changing for me. I really enjoy the work. You go home every day with feeling like you got a sense of purpose, especially here where you grew up. Knowing what I had when I was a kid, and knowing what Sherman was like, and really what the rest of the county's like, really gives me some perspective as to just what I want to get out of what I'm doing and how I want to do it. And at the end, what are we accomplishing? We're making sure that our communities are safe, just like they were when I was a kid here.
Mm-hmm. So you've been DA now for 5 years.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the various people I was going to interview today, and I believe you're the longest in office that I'm interviewing today.
Wow.
Because either they're upcoming candidates or they've been in their office less than.
Yeah, George is in a year, and PJ is appointed, and
right.
Well, Andy's. I think
Andy didn't come today.
Ah, that's true.
I've
that you've interviewed. Yeah.
Interviewed. So I have found when I held different offices and different jobs, the longer I was in office or in position, you know what I'm going to say, the
Sure.
more people don't like me. Are you finding that?
Well, there's some truth to that. The reality is we make a lot of decisions in our office every single day, and we're very acutely aware of the impact that those decisions have on people. And we also know that we are never going to make decisions that make all of the people happy. It's just not something, especially in criminal justice, that's going to happen. We fall back on our ethical responsibilities, we fall back on our integrity, and we fall back on doing what we believe is right, what we believe is just. And at the end of the day, we know as a collective group that we go home with the firm belief and understanding that we just did the right thing.
I have interviewed a number of people, and once in a while people say we. Who's we?
We is the group of people that work for me. And I have a victims coordinator's office with 3 victims coordinators. We've been very fortunate to work with the state to get an additional victims coordinator during my time. When I started, we had 2. We now have 3. I have 1 full-time investigator, and I have 3 part-time investigators. One of those part-time investigators were added since I came on. I also have 11 and a half attorneys, so 11 full-time and 1 part-time attorney. And one of those 11 full-timers is new since I came on. And the reason we've been adding staff is very simply put, is because of the number of cases that our county generates every year. And we as a group, when I say we, I'm talking about the whole office, full of extremely dedicated people. Most of them grew up here as well. And I cannot say enough about the staff that I put together and the people that I have working for me and just how dedicated they are to making sure their cases get handled the right way.
You know, there were times where I thought the press was being kind of hard on you, and I wondered, you were kind of new in your position, and you had some tough cases that didn't necessarily go the way you wanted, maybe. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I'm wondering, how did you handle that? How do you feel about that now?
Well, you know, when you're the prosecutor, you have an interest in finding justice, and which means you're doing everything you can ethically to see a case through. There are boundaries you don't cross. There are lines that you don't even toe. And the reason you don't is because you're a different kind of litigator than everyone else. You know, at the end of the day, you're wearing the white hat. You are looked to for guidance. You're looked to for your sense of integrity, and you fight fair. And you know, we've had some very difficult cases. But you look at what we've done on a statewide basis, and you start looking at crime data from across the state, and all of it's publicly available. And you look at our crime statistics, and we are very much in line, if not just above the average of what the rest of the state's doing. So, you know, some of what you deal with as a prosecutor is the public's misconception of what they think the system is, and what the system is not is this. The system is not designed for the prosecutor to charge a case through a grand jury and convict the person every single time. It's not set up that way. Our system of government demands more than that. Our system demands a level of proof before you can take someone's liberty, and it should be that way.
Okay. So what you're saying, some situations don't rise to that level?
Well, what people think is that if you can get something indicted, that you should be able to get it convicted, and they're two very different standards. There's a lot of people in this county that have sat on a grand jury. They've listened to us present cases, and they've listened to the instructions of the court and then to the prosecutors in my office. And they learn very quickly that the standard of proof in a grand jury proceeding is just reasonable cause, which is just a little more than 50-50, and that's enough to charge the person. They're not finding them guilty or innocent. And then you move the matter along until you get a petit jury or a jury trial, as most people know, where you get 12 jurors on a felony here. And the proof standard of proof in a felony matter is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And they're very different things. And sometimes, and most times, you have enough evidence to get a matter through a grand jury, but the quality and the quantity of the proof sometimes isn't enough to get it through. And you know, I think every time a prosecutor loses a case, it's a punch in the gut. It's hard to take. You have a victim that feels like you know, they're wanting justice. But you know, what we've done here in this county is we've done very well. If you look at the rest of the state, we are below the state average in acquittals. We do a good job, and we've tried a lot of cases in the last 5 years, and I'm very proud of my staff for that.
When you say acquittal, I don't know what you mean by acquittal.
An acquittal is when they've been found not guilty of the charges.
Oh, all right.
Which doesn't happen much. The state average is about 0.3%, and ours has been below 0.3% every single year. We were 0.3% one year. So we've been at or below the state average for acquittals. So on a whole, when you grand scheme of things, we do quite well. The problem is the public sees an acquittal and they think that we've somehow lapsed in our responsibility. You know, I can't tell you that you know, there isn't some things that we review cases that we're not successful on, and we try to, you know, account for adjustments and make changes for the future. Maybe we would have done something different. But for the most part, we're putting all of the evidence in, and then it's left in the hands of the people that live in this county.
Now, you said 0.3 acquittal.
0.3%.
0.3%. So that means 99.7% of the time you did not get an acquittal?
Yes. That means the rest, yeah. Of the cases charged, it'd be 99.7% of the time cases are not acquitted.
And what happened?
They either pled guilty, they went, we dismissed the charges. Sometimes that happens because a charge will get charged where there isn't a sufficient level of proof. And just alluding back to what I told you at the beginning, we have a different responsibility. We're not civil litigators. We're not going to try and win multi-million-dollar lawsuits. We don't have a win at all cost. That is not what we do.
Okay.
We find justice, which means if there isn't a sufficient level of proof to maintain a charge, our ethical obligation is to dismiss that case. And we do that from time to time. And that's how we operate. We do our jobs the right way.
I would suspect some people aren't real happy about that.
Yeah, and it's because they don't understand really what our obligations are. And our obligations are different than other lawyers. We have an obligation to be fair, to find justice, and to do the right thing ethically.
Talk to me about this concept. And I'm not a lawyer, and I don't do your job, but I hear stuff, I read stuff, and it may not just be your office, but you'll see things on TV and stuff. But you'll see somebody go and they did some horrendous thing, and the DA says, well, if we take it to court, it's going to spend all this money, blah blah blah. But if you'll plead down to a lesser felony, we can wrap this thing up and not even go to court. So what is that called? Plea bargaining or something like that?
You work on plea arrangements with almost all your cases. And I'll tell you, I will correct something you said. I don't think there's ever been a case where we've said it's going to cost too much money.
Okay.
Money
well, I didn't mean you personally.
Sure. No,
I meant in the world of media and
right. And just for the viewers' sake, we do not plead cases because they will be expensive to prosecute.
Right.
We spend thousands and thousands of dollars on experts on certain cases to make sure we do it right. That's not a factor. If it's money, we make a special application to the legislature. We can ask for additional funds if we're going to go over our budget.
Really?
But I can tell you one of the things that we're never going to factor into our case-making decision. Our case decision making, is going to be the cost, and along with that, any political considerations. And that's one of the other things that you juggle as the DA. People will advise you, well, that's a really hard case. You should be careful with that one. And they're talking about, how's that going to look for you politically? I'll tell you this: I don't think I've ever included in the calculus on whether to take a case or not what's going to do to my political future. I don't see myself as a career district attorney. I'm not going to do this for 20 years. I'm going to do this for as long as I think I'm fulfilling what the public expects of me, and as long as I'm satisfied with what I'm doing. But I'm never going to make a decision when I prosecute a case based on how it's going to look politically. And that's why we've taken some very difficult cases over the last 4 years. Cases one's from 2008. We're awaiting a sentence on homicide that happened in Westfield. That case, the defendants pled guilty. We're awaiting sentence. That's a 12-year-old case. We took a case for Monroe County as a favor because they had a conflict. It was a homicide case, and we got a 20-year conviction on that. But we take cases because it's the right thing to do, because we ethically should, and we fight hard on those. And we know that sometimes we won't win, but we are going to do everything we can to find justice.
You use a lot of statistics, and a lot of people use statistics either pro or against something. So in this case, how do we all know that you've been successful? How do we know statistically that you're winning or getting ahead? Or
yeah.
I don't know what I'm going with this, but
sure.
But I mean, people will say, yeah, Chautauqua County, blah 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 blah. They just do whatever.
No, you can look all this stuff up. I mean, that's the beauty of our criminal justice system here in New York. It's very transparent. You can go to the Department of Criminal Justice Services. You go into their resources and their crime statistics page, and you can look up county by county and see how your county's doing.
So what does it say about us?
It says we're doing better than the average in New York State. We sit above the average in every category during my tenure here. When you're talking about conviction rates, when you're talking about convictions for felonies on felonies.
Give me a couple of those. Give me an example.
Well, you can look at the crime stats for Chautauqua County. You can look at sentences to prison for felony cases. The statewide average is about 9.7. We've averaged over the last 5 years just under 11%. So that's sending people convicted of felonies to prison, which is state prison, which is different than jail. But you can look at all of this stuff. You can look at the convictions that we've had on felony cases, which were at about 77.5%.
Wait a minute, what does that mean?
It means that whenever somebody's charged with a felony, 77.5% of the times they're convicted of a crime, which means a felony and misdemeanor, some form of crime. And the state average is only 63.2, so we're almost 15% points better than the rest of the state. And the reason why these are important, especially here in Chautauqua County, these stats, and trust me, I would love to be able to tell you that we're in first. We're not. But we are above the state average, and we're doing that despite the fact that we have the highest caseload of any 62 counties in the state. And that's a big deal.
Highest caseload of what?
Cases per attorney. We have, over the last several years, we've had the highest. Well, we've flip-flopped back and forth with Oswego County. But over the last 5 years, we have, if you take the last 5 years, we have the highest number of crimes charged and compared to the number of prosecutors of any of the 62 counties in the state.
So per prosecutor, you're the highest per
Not
case
only on cases charged, but on felonies charged as well.
So like how many is
both
that?
categories. 287 cases per prosecutor.
Wait a minute. You said you got 11 and a half attorneys, and each of those have equivalent 287
We have
cases?
12 and a half attorneys because I am counting.
Oh, 12 and a half. All right. Count
So
your two.
we have 287 cases per attorney, and that's per 12 and that's for 12
There's
and a half.
365 days a year.
We had 3,589 adult arrests last year.
That's pretty staggering.
Yes. 86 of those were for felonies. Oh, excuse me. 1,080 of those were for felony. 86 per felonies per prosecutor. Now, just to contrast that with the state average of cases per attorney is 154. And the state average felonies per attorney is 47. So we're looking at almost double the state average, but yet our success rate is better than the state average. So we're twice as many cases as the state average, but we're outperforming the state average. So that's, in my mind, that's a testament to my staff. They do a phenomenal job.
I didn't even know I was going to ask this question, so I'm going to ask this question. The system, someone messes up, they do something terrible, they're prosecuted, they get charged, they find them guilty, perhaps they are fined, perhaps they serve time. How about the repeaters? I mean, how's that looking here in Chautauqua County?
Repeat offenders drive a good portion of our crime. We take that into account when we're trying to pursue an appropriate disposition. Obviously, the conduct is a major factor. You know, if it's a repeat offender for a pettit larceny of $50, we treat that differently than a repeat offender that's burglarizing somebody's home. But nevertheless, one of the factors, and you asked about plea bargaining earlier, it's a necessity of the function. I don't think there's a district attorney in this state that would say that we aren't going to do that. That's unnecessary. It shouldn't be done. Plea bargaining is a fact of life in the criminal justice system just because of time and resources and court time. We have one county court, and as I said moments ago, we had 1,080 felonies. And those cases get funneled into one place. So when we're looking at cases, we're looking at the conduct, we're looking at victim cooperation, we're looking at the damage that was done, whether it be to property or to person. We look at the offender's particular criminal history, and all of those factors weigh into what we think is a fair and reasonable result. And then we work on reaching that with a disposition. And in the times where the defendant wants and their attorney wants something better than we're willing to give, those are the cases that go to trial.
Okay. Nobody ever has enough money. Nobody has enough resources. But if you had a magic wand or a limitless pot of money, what would you do if reelected, and what would you change in your department?
Well, Doc, I have a physics degree and I love math, and I'm a really data-driven numbers guy. So
I wouldn't have noticed.
When I look at all of this stuff, I'm like, oh, well, what counties are like ours? There's a couple counties just like Chautauqua County in population and crime rate. We're talking about Schenectady County. We're talking about Rensselaer County. We're talking about Ulster County.
Okay.
They're all very much the same size, all within about 50,000 people population. Felony crime rates all right around 1,000 to 1,100. Okay. Just to tell you how many attorneys those offices have, Ulster County has 25, Schenectady County has 25. Rensselaer County, who's in a similar situation to us, they have 15. But they have 15, so they have 2.5 more than us.
You're pretty lean.
We are. We are the leanest. Well, that's why we have the highest caseload in the state. We're the leanest per crime rate, for the crime rate of any county. And in a perfect world, you can look at those budgets, which also, by the way, all of this is publicly available. You can go look up the county budgets and see what their local share is. So, Schenectady's county's local share to their DA's office is $3.8 million. That was last year. And ours is 1.9, exactly half of that.
Yeah.
And they're handling almost the same number of cases as us, give or take 100. So
That's really got to stress the system, doesn't it?
yeah, and you asked me what would I do if, in a perfect world, if I had what I needed. What we would be able to do here is we would be able to specialize in more things. One of the things that I'm very proud we were able to do over the last 4 years is we have designated one prosecutor to be a narcotics prosecutor, which he's focused solely on those. We have one prosecutor tasked with exclusively prosecuting sex crimes, both adult and child sex crimes. And we have a prosecutor that's tasked with domestic violence. You know, those are the three most pressing areas in this county, in my opinion. Obviously, I handle all the felonies. I mean, I handle all the homicide cases, unless there's a conflict of timing, which there was one last year. But other than the one that one of my chief assistants handled last year, I've handled all of the homicides that have happened in this county since taking over. But what we would be able to do if we had the staff size that was right would be to designate prosecutors to gun crime prosecutor, violent crime prosecutor, DWI prosecutor. We have one that tasks some of their time to DWIs, but fortunately for us, our DWI numbers have been falling pretty regularly over the last 10 years.
So if you had a larger staff with specialties, how's that spell out as a benefit to the community?
It's a benefit to the community because what you're able to do when you can task someone to one kind of case, you get them into the training. They become kind of like a specialist, like you go to a hand specialist or a foot specialist when you go see doctors. You go to ear, nose, and throat. There's specialties within the medical field just like there are within the legal field and just like there are within the criminal justice field. Being a sex crimes prosecutor is very different from being a DWI vehicular crimes prosecutor.
Yeah.
Very different things. Being a homicide prosecutor is very different. If you go up to Erie County, where my friend John Flynn's the DA, they have a homicide unit. And those homicide prosecutors handle 5 to 10 homicides a year. Doc, that's what I've been doing myself. You know, we've had 4 homicides a year for the last 5 years. I've been doing that on top of doing all the other things that are required of the DA, which are extensive.
Okay. Right now, the police departments, district attorneys are pretty much under the gun in the press. What is the relationship between your office and, let's say, the Sheriff's Department or Jamestown Police Department or Fredonia or whomever? How does that work?
We work very closely with them. We hold ourselves out there for them whenever they need assistance legally. Typically, if there's a major crime scene, we're going because we want to be there not only to kind of see what the scene's like, because as a prosecutor, you're going to want to know down the road what that scene felt like, what was the lighting like, what was the temperature. All those things are important when you're going to get in that courtroom and try that case. So on any major scene, typically for me it's a homicide, I'll be there. I'll be speaking with detectives. I'll be thinking about what I think might be important in the case. That helps them with their questioning of witnesses. If the defendant's being interviewed, I often will be watching that interview. If there's things that I want asked, I will make sure that the detectives know that. But we're there for legal support. We also assist them, and we have a lot more in the last 5 years. We have been assisting them with their in-service training. As you know, we've seen just a lot of change in the criminal justice system over the last 5 years. You know, we've had raise the age legislation come through. We've had bail change. We've had bail change twice. I mean, truthfully, it changed in January and then it changed again in April. And then we've had pretty extensive discovery reform. And we have been there for them every step of the way, making sure that they understand what the new laws are, making sure they know how to implement those changes within their department so that it works best for us, because truthfully, all of that information is coming into my office from all of the police jurisdictions in this county, which there are 7 local jurisdictions if you count, well, there's 8 if you count Carroll and the SUNY police, and then there's the state police and the sheriff. So we have 10 different police agencies operating in this county, and all of that information comes to us. And you know, we streamline pretty well how to manage that. It's gone really well, actually. We've digitized everything. We no longer use paper files for the most part. We're exchanging discovery that way with Defense Counsel, but everything's happening at a different pace now than it was before. And we worked very closely with police departments to make sure that we were ready to do that when the switch turned January 1st.
I looked up a song today, and it's a Rod Stewart song, and it says, "I wish I knew what I know now when I was younger." So is there anything that you would say, wow, I wish I would have known that 5 years ago? Is anything in the office? We're kind of running out of time now,
Sure.
but I just thought maybe it was something that just jumps out at you and says, ooh, I wish I knew that back then.
I wish I would have known how to let things roll off my skin. Because there are a lot of people that say negative things about you. They don't know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know what you stand for. And they certainly don't know how you go about your business. And one of the hard things for me early on in this job was the very public criticism, which I've come to learn is a regular and normal thing in public service, unfortunately. But it's that regular and frequent judgment that I think keeps you on the right path. We're always going to strive to do the right thing, and sometimes that's just not going to be good enough for people. But like I said at the beginning of this interview, we know we're doing the right thing every single day.
Okay, we're down to a minute, and I promise you have the last say. So, District Attorney Swanson, who's running for re-election, what do you want to tell the folks about why you want to be re-elected, and whatever you want to say?
Sure. I've been doing this for 5 years. I consider it a very distinct honor to be given the responsibility every single day to work on behalf of victims, to work on behalf of the people who need someone standing there for them. And as you review the materials and the credentials of myself and my opponent, I would encourage you to go to public websites, the Department of Criminal Justice Services. Go and find that information for yourself, because if you read a statistic and it comes from my opponent, I would double check what he's saying. It's very important to me when I run for DA that I uphold the highest level of integrity. The information that I'm going to put out, I'm going to make sure is accurate so that the voters can make an informed decision. But all of it's out there for you. If you ever need any information, go to the Department of Criminal Justice Services. But really, I want to thank the voters for giving me 4 years, and I want to ask you for 4 more.
Okay, and thank you, Pat Swanson, running for District Attorney here in Chautauqua County. That concludes our series of Chautauqua candidates. I'm Doc Hamels, and I want to remind you that this show will be broadcast every day beginning October 3rd at 1:30 and 7:30, and you can check your schedules for all the other 5 shows in this series. Thanks again for joining us, and get out there and vote, and let's continue to make Chautauqua County a great place to be. Thanks for listening and viewing. Take care.